remember last Friday, the President signing the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill into Act, except for two provisions, Clause 4 and 5, which deals with the role of governing bodies as well as the implementation of language policy. The President saying he's reaching out an olive branch to groups like Trade Union Solidarity and AfriForum, saying that he's willing to discuss these particular clauses with him because AfriForum views the BELA Bill, now the BELA Act, as an attempt to culturally ethnic cleanse Afrikaans and Afrikaans-speaking people. AfriForum's objection was that the implementation of the bill will enable the destruction of a linguistic and cultural community's schools, thereby jeopardizing the group's cultural significance. It's all about Afrikaans to them. But I'm joined now by Professor Hein Willemse. He's an emeritus professor of literature at the Department of Afrikaans at the University of Pretoria. Good morning, Hein. Really appreciate your time. Is Afrikaans at risk in South African schools? Or is it white Afrikaans culture that is what has AfriForum and groups like Solidarity concerned at the moment, Hein?
I think one needs to have a differential view of the differences, I think, in approaches and perhaps even the differences in history and the trajectories of history, I would say, Lester. I think in the South, we perhaps do not necessarily understand the kind of pressures that AfriForum is talking about. And I think that's fairly different in the North. Having lived in the North for about 10, 20 years, I found that the sense of survival, of an end time, is perhaps more prevalent there than down in the South, where I think, especially with Afrikaans-speaking people at that, I think the experience that I have had was that people feel that they have become a very endangered minority in the North, especially with, concerning Afrikaans and Afrikaans culture itself. In the South, we perhaps have a different view on that, simply because this is the origin of Afrikaans. The region is the origin of Afrikaans. The Afrikaans-speaking people here are fairly are distributed across various indices, and I think we need to understand that kind of history as well. So when AfriForum speaks about they feeling threatened, I think one needs to understand where they come from, where they situate themselves, and it would be easy to say, well, we as Afrikaans-speaking people say in the South don't agree with that, and that's, I think, one needs to put that into context. But we need to understand that the history of Afrikaans, especially in the North, has been one of insurgency in a certain sense. Afrikaans-speaking people have been almost the colonizers of parts of the country there. And people feel themselves, especially black people generally, feel themselves that they have been excluded from privilege and from access and so forth, whereas the white ruling class at that time was in control of all the resources. So that kind of context and history is quite important to understand.
So talk to me about the meaning of Afrikaans and its meaning to particularly white Afrikaans speaking identity. There are more black Afrikaans speakers in South Africa than white. Afrikaans is the third most spoken mother tongue in South Africa. And you're very much right. I identify with Afrikaans speaking people in the Western Cape, in the Northern Cape, in the Eastern Cape. But what does that Afrikaans mean to the cultural identity of a constituency that AfriForum represents?
Yeah, well, I think increasingly, I think we need to try and understand, to get into that frame of mind. Exactly what does that mean? And it means, on the one hand, one needs to understand that it's a conservative approach to culture, in the sense that people want to retain certain elements. They want to retain elements of their cultural expression. And it would be very difficult for someone like myself and like perhaps you as well, who are not white Afrikaans-speaking people, to understand exactly what that means. One must understand that the whole history of the creation of the invention of Afrikanerdom centered around a couple of elements. Or the one was religion, the Dutch Reformed religion initially. The second one was the sense of being a threatened, a beleaguered group of people. That's a very strong sense of cultural identity. And then the third one is obviously language. Language and culture then becomes this, third factor in that cultural makeup. And around those areas, those three pillars, a whole cultural network developed that we need to understand as well. That cultural expression manifests itself, for instance, in schools, manifests itself in the church, manifests itself in previously in Volksspiele, for instance, and Afriform and Solidariteit. What they have done was to take those elements and foster that into their sense of culture, their conservative sense of culture. And far from people like myself for criticizing that. I don't think if you're outside of that cultural experience, one should not criticize that, just simply because you don't understand the nitty-gritty of that. But it is an important element to ask what do we do with shared resources? What do we do with schools, universities, institutions like hospitals? What do we do where we share the country with people that do not share our cultural experience? And how do we do that? How do we do that with sensitivity, with understanding that everybody belongs in this country and that we respect everybody's cultural expression? We cannot deny that. So,
really appreciate your time. Unfortunately, running out of time there, Professor Hein Willemse, emeritus professor in the Department of Afrikaans at the University of Pretoria. 29 minutes past 7 o'clock.